Hello, Disney fans! We're continuing with part 2 of my Hunchback of Notre Dame review, and as in the last one, we're going to be talking about some very dark stuff. It's amazing that the movie is as light as it is given the source material, but even without following the book exactly, this movie deals with sexual harassment, with genocide, racism, religious corruption. A kids' movie. Well, when we left this, when when last we left our characters, Frollo was going crazy because Esmeralda had escaped from his clutches. He thought he would keep her locked away in Notre Dame for forever because it was the only place she could have sanctuary, and Quasimodo helped her get out of the cathedral. Because beautiful as the cathedral is, it was still a prison to Esmeralda. So now she's free, and Frollo is going nuts trying to find her. And when I say going nuts, I do mean going nuts. He starts his search for her by rounding up a bunch of Esmeralda's people. While actually finding them, he's going door to door, basically hunting them. Gee, glad there aren't any people now that go door to door hunting minorities, right? Well, he finds a group of Esmeralda's people, and he tries to bribe them basically into selling her out to him.
10 pieces of silver for the gypsy Esmeralda. Lock them up.
Frollo bribing them doesn't work, but he keeps upping the amount of the bribe. Now, it's very subtle. They never actually say 30 pieces of silver. But the writers are clearly hinting at even though they don't outright say 30 pieces, they're hinting towards the 30 pieces of silver that the Pharisees offered Judas in exchange for betraying Jesus. I love these little subtle biblical references in here. They're actively casting Frollo in the role of the evil Pharisees, and that is brilliant.
20 pieces of silver for the gypsy Esmeralda.
Frollo finally goes too far when as if this wasn't bad enough what he's done already. But no, the line where people actually start to say Frollo's gone mad, he's gone nuts, is when he targets the Miller's family. The Miller is known to be an extremely kind, good man. And Frollo asks him, have you been harboring gypsies? And again, like I said in the last video, I'm using that word because I'm quoting the movie, which uses the word historically correctly for the time. These days, it's a slur. The correct term is Romany. So, Frollo asked, have you been harboring any of them? And the Miller just said, our home's always open to the weary traveler. We help anybody in need. Frollo lies and promises that they're just being put under house arrest until everything gets sorted out and they'll be fine. And then he orders Phoebus to burn their home down with them in it. This is when Phoebus finally decides to take orders anymore. He doesn't care if he's a soldier or not. This is too far.
What? Until it's orders, these people are traitors and must be made examples of.
With all due respect, sir, I was not trained to murder the innocent.
But you were trained to follow orders.
Frollo sets the windmill on fire himself. And the only way to save the family is Phoebus goes in there and saves them himself. Which means Frollo is now going to have him executed for disobeying orders.
The sentence for insubordination is death. Such a pity. You threw away a promising career.
Consider it my highest honor, sir.
Thankfully, Esmeralda's there and able to cause enough of a distraction for Phoebus to escape. He takes Frollo's horse and makes a run for it, but unfortunately he doesn't get very far. Esmeralda is once again able to save him, pulling him out of the river, and she knows she has to get him to safety. And the only really safe place around is the cathedral. Of course, Quasimodo's in the cathedral, and he is worried sick about Esmeralda because Frollo is literally burning down the city trying to find her. He doesn't care who's hurt, who's killed. He's literally burning Paris to the ground. The gargoyles try to comfort Quasimodo, saying, Esmeralda's just hiding out where it's safe, and as soon as she's able, she'll come back to you. And Quasimodo's like, yeah, why would she come back to me? And the gargoyles are like, no, she is falling in love with you, or at least the gargoyles are sure she is. Of course, we know what's really happening at this moment. But the gargoyles try to reassure him, and this is the one song in the movie that I could live without. I don't hate it, but I'm also a musical theater fan, and in the musical theater community, there's a joke that in every show there's that one song you can skip on every soundtrack. Yet this is the song I would skip in this one. It's called A Guy Like You, and it does have some cute moments and good moments. But overall, I just don't think it's as good as the other songs in this movie.
You're a surprise from every angle. Mungia above, she's gotta love a guy like you.
Not a bad song, like I said, but it's just I just don't like it as well as the others. And everybody's got their own opinion. Maybe this is your favorite song in the movie, and if it is, that's fine. It's all a matter of opinion. Now, the song is interrupted when Esmeralda shows up, and of course, Quasimodo is thrilled to see her, but not so thrilled with who she's bringing with her. Although, for her sake, of course, he does agree to help protect Phoebus. But the moment when he sees that they are in love with each other is just absolutely heart-shattering.
Arrow almost pierced your heart.
I'm not so sure it didn't.
In spite of the obvious pain of realizing that Esmeralda loves someone else, being the good person he is, Quasimodo says, yes, I'll still keep Phoebus safe. Esmeralda has to flee because Frollo's coming, and Quasimodo is afraid that Frollo's going to realize Phoebus is hidden there. But the real danger is that Frollo knows that Quasimodo helped Esmeralda escape from Notre Dame. Now watch this scene very closely. Here's another one of those little subtle details they include. When Frollo notices the figurine of Esmeralda and throws it down, he also topples over the figurine of himself. Nice foreshadowing that in going after Esmeralda, he's going to be the one that's going to end up being hurt.
It's awfully good. Looks very much like the gypsy girl. I know. You helped her escape. And now all Paris is burning because of you.
Frollo claims that he knows where the Court of Miracles is, where all of Esmeralda's people gather as a safe place. And he claims he's going to attack at dawn with 1,000 men. Now he's telling Quasimodo this in the hope that Quasimodo will go to warn Esmeralda and lead him right to her. Now, of course, Quasimodo doesn't know where Esmeralda is, but earlier on in the movie, when she left Notre Dame, she gave him a necklace that she told him would help him find a safe place if he ever needed one. And she told him, when you wear this woven band, you hold the city in your hand. And that's the clue that Quasimodo uses when he and Phoebus are trying to find Esmeralda.
Sort of code. Maybe it's Arabic. No, it's not Arabic. Maybe it's ancient Greek.
When you wear this woven band, you hold the city in your hand.
What?
It's the city.
What are you talking about?
It's a map. See? Here's the cathedral and the river and this little
I've never
stone
seen a map that looks like...
I've lived up in the bell tower for 20 years. It's what I know what the sea looks like from above. And this is it.
Fun fact about that map. Now, if you actually look where the X is on there, and the location they end up at, that actually does match the map of Paris. It's accurate, which I think is pretty cool. It leads them to the old catacombs, which is where the Court of Miracles is. And Phoebus realizes, things are going a little too well down here. We should have run into something by now, a guard, and a booby trap, or an ambush. And of course, cue the ambush. Now, this song, Court of Miracles, is of course fun to listen to. I mean, it's dark, but it's darkly humorous. I mean, you can't not laugh at some of the jokes being made, and obviously, unlike Victor Hugo, Disney isn't going to kill off the heroes. But, like I said, you gotta love the dark humor. But one of the other reasons I love this song is, again, like in Hellfire, they actually use quotes from the book. And I love this evidence that they didn't just read a summary of it, or get the idea for the basic plot. These people sat down and read the book and thought, what lines of this can we work with? And that's especially impressive given that there were a lot of other adaptations. They didn't have to read the book. By the time this version of Hunchback of Notre Dame was made, there were 1,000,001 versions of it, from, yes, other cartoon versions. There were classic movies, starting with Lon Chaney's silent film version. The Charles Lawton one is the one that this is mostly based on. That's where you get the ideas and the themes for, protecting minorities, about protecting the outcast of society. That comes from the Charles Lawton version, and I do have to say a quick few things about that before I go further. The Charles Lawton version debuted at a film festival that was in competition to a Nazi film festival. It was made by a German who had escaped Nazi Germany. And the idea of protecting the Romani, a group of people that Hitler was actively against and tried to exterminate, yeah, the Charles Lawton version was basically a big FU to Hitler, which I gotta say, how can you not love that? And that was the version Disney most heavily relied on, but they did also clearly read the book. Like they talk about the lame can walk and the blind can see. That's directly taken from where a poet by the name of Pierre Gringori finds the Court of Miracles. And this is a quote from the book. He says, "Where am I?" cried the affrighted poet. In the Court of Miracles, replied a fourth spectre who had joined them. "Miracles upon my soul," rejoined Gringori, "for here are blind who see and lame who run." Pretty close to the lines of the song. And the next part again quotes the book. It's not an exact quote, but you can obviously see this scene was based on the scene from the book where Gringori comes to the Court of Miracles. And that part about a hive, that's I'm pretty sure inspired by this scene here where it describes the Court of Miracles. The sewer disgorging every morning and receiving every night that that fetid torrent of vice and roguery which always overflows the streets of the great capital. A monstrous hive to which all the drones of the social order retired at night. Again, the hive reference. So, gotta love those details that show they read the book. I know I said that, but it just amazes me because Hunchback is not an easy book to read. You are, if you go to the audiobook, you're an hour and a half in before they even mention Quasimodo. The first hour and a half of the audiobook is basically a really bad play being performed until everybody there just says, yeah, let's go watch the King of Fools get crowned. So, to make it through the entire book, I give the people who made this a lot of credit. Now, it's hard to see a character like Clopin, who is a likable character. You know, he's a lovable rogue. It's hard to see him actually about to kill someone, especially the heroes. But keep in mind, he does believe that they are both loyal to Frollo. He thinks they're a threat. They're here to hurt me, they're here to hurt the others. They are a danger to us. That's why he's doing what he's doing. Like I said, like hornets protecting the hive. He perceives them as dangerous. He doesn't know they're there to help.
Everybody, there's good news tonight. It's a double-header! A couple of true spies. And interesting spies. His captain of the guard and his loyal, bell-ringing henchman.
Lucky thing that Esmeralda's goat friend Jolly was there to go get Esmeralda. Now, Jolly, I gotta talk about a little bit here. You might think that Jolly was invented just for the purpose of this movie if you haven't read the book. You know, adorable animal who hangs out with the heroes. That's classic Disney. I mean, name me a Disney movie that doesn't have that. Well, Jolly actually is from the book. Here they refer to Jolly as he. In the book, she's referred to as she, and Esmeralda actually refers to her as my sister. Now, the scene coming up where Esmeralda shows up and says, hey, these guys aren't here to hurt us, they're actually our friends. That's inspired by what she does for Gringory. Remember I talked about the poet who found his way into the Court of Miracles and almost ended up killed? She steps forward and says, hey, I'll vouch for this guy. I've never met him, but I'd say give him a fair shot. I'll vouch for him. And they are basically seen as husband and wife, although they don't do what husband and wives do. She's basically in charge of him, saying, yeah, I'll make sure that he, doesn't hurt anybody, doesn't betray anything. And Clopin says, okay, cool. He's yours to watch over for the period of 4 years, and after 4 years, he can do whatever he likes. At that point, we don't care anymore. Well, the way Esmeralda spoke up for him, you might think that Gringory falls in love with Esmeralda. Take a guess who he does fall in love with. That's right, the goat. I'm not kidding. I am not making this up. And later on in the book, when Gringory has a chance to save Esmeralda's life, he reasons, I can't save both her and the goat, so I'm going to go with saving the goat. I am not kidding. If you read the book, that is in there. Weird, I know, but yeah. So I'm very glad Disney did not go too accurate to the book. So, anyway, of course, Esmeralda speaks up and says, these guys are on our side.
These men aren't spies, they're our friends.
Why didn't they say so?
We did say so.
Now, of course, once they're freed, they do give their warning. Look, Frollo's coming at dawn with 1,000 men. He's going to attack. You gotta get out of here. Everybody gets ready to leave. Now, at this point, there was actually supposed to be another song called A Place of Miracles. Basically, Esmeralda and Phoebus sing about what a miracle it is that they've found each other and about how in love they are, and Quasimodo realizes, yeah, there's really no chance for him. Now, this song was cut because the same things are basically stated at different points in the movie, some earlier, some later, that are included in the song, and so it's not really a necessary song. It's got a pretty melody. I will include the link to it in the video description, so if anybody wants to check it out, they can. But I can see why it was cut because it's not really necessary for one thing, and for another, at this point, everybody's in a hurry to get packed, ready to get out of there. So they're not going to take time to sing a song. Yeah, people don't stop to sing songs randomly in real life, but it really would have slowed things down too much at this point. But that being said, there are a couple details in it that I like. We see during that song that Quasimodo does accept, okay, Esmeralda and Phoebus are going to be together, and he's honestly happy for them. Clopin gets out some wine and asks Quasimodo to make a toast, and Quasimodo makes a toast to love and friendship, basically saying, I want to be friends with both Esmeralda and Phoebus, and I've accepted this. And Clopin has a line, spoken like a true gypsy. Of course, this foreshadows Quasimodo learning of his real heritage, that his mother was Romany and she actually gave her life for him. So it would have been nice foreshadowing to Quasimodo learning that, and I would have liked to have seen that explored a bit more. It is covered in the movie, but I'd like to have seen more in depth of that, but for time limit, I get it, they couldn't do that. There was also one brief moment where Clopin is looking at Quasimodo through the end of a wine bottle, and he sees Quasimodo not as deformed, but the way he would have looked had he not been deformed, with a straight back, a normal looking face, quote unquote normal, whatever normal can be considered. But I could have seen that. Those ideas I can see being worked with, definitely. But honestly, I am glad that they cut that song. So, getting back to the main story, of course, it's revealed that Frollo told Quasimodo he knew where the Court of Miracles was just so he could follow Quasimodo there.
Me, thank Quasimodo. Without his help, I would never have found my way here.
Nor would I.
Now that Frollo has found the Court of Miracles, obviously he arrests Esmeralda and the others. Now, Esmeralda was arrested in the book, but interestingly enough, the charge was not witchcraft. The charge was the murder of Phoebus. Now, if you haven't read the book right now, you're going, what? Yes. But here's how it happened in the book. Phoebus and Esmeralda were alone together. Nothing was happening. I want to make that clear. But they were having a quiet moment talking together, and Frollo shows up and out of jealousy stabs Phoebus. It looks like Esmeralda did it to everybody else, and she ends up arrested for Phoebus's murder. But now here's the catch. Remember I said in part 1 that Phoebus was a real scumbag in the book. Phoebus survives the stabbing, and all he has to do to save Esmeralda from being executed is say, hey, look people, I'm alive and it wasn't her who stabbed me in the first place. All he has to do to save her life. But he doesn't do that, because he's engaged to someone else, and it wouldn't look too good if people knew he was hanging out with Esmeralda. Wouldn't look too good to his bride and her family, so what can the poor guy do? He's gotta let Esmeralda be executed, right? Yeah. Like I said, in the book, Phoebus is not the hero by any means. Now, this would not have worked for the movie version, of course. But now, here's an interesting thing. Victor Hugo himself rewrote this story as an operetta called La Esmeralda. And in that version, he himself actually had Phoebus being much more heroic. So interesting, Hugo basically did a fan fiction of his own work. Pretty interesting, I think. And that's where I think a lot of the idea of Phoebus being the good guy, the heroic guy, got its roots. So they are all hauled away, and Frollo still has his eye on getting Esmeralda. And I love her reaction here when he tells her, "Yeah, I can save your life if you come with me." Esmeralda will not submit to him, even at the cost of her own life.
You stand upon the brink of the abyss. Yet even now it is not too late. I can save you from the flames of this world and the next. Choose me or the fire.
There's actually a really great line in the book where Esmeralda tells Frollo she's more afraid of him than she would be afraid of any gallows. So in the book, she isn't as defiant as here. She isn't as fiery, as much of as a fighter for justice. But she's still willing to tell Frollo, "Yeah, no, I am not submitting to you." Now, of course, this is the most famous scene in the entire movie coming up. Even if you've never seen the movie, never read the book, you've seen this parodied countless times, you've heard of it, you know that Quasimodo is going to come down and take Esmeralda in his arms, swing her back up to the bell tower, and proclaim sanctuary for her. This is such an iconic part of the movie. Like I said, everybody knows this scene. Like I said, this moment has been parodied a lot, but in the film it is just so inspiring. And the people are inspired to take a stand against what's happening. Not only by this moment, but they're helped along by Phoebus' speech too. And one thing I think is really great in Phoebus' speech here, when he says that Frollo has declared war on Notre Dame herself, he's not talking about the cathedral. Remember, Notre Dame is French for Our Lady, referring, of course, to Mary. He's saying here Frollo has directly gone against our Blessed Virgin, and that will not be tolerated.
Frollo has persecuted our people, ransacked our city. Now he has declared war on Notre Dame herself. Will we allow it?
Gotta love seeing the people take a stand and fight back. But now, this again, this is where it's kind of weird that in part two I'm able to talk more about the differences between the book and the film, but here's another big difference. In the movie, it's obvious the people are on Quasimodo's side, on Esmeralda's side. They're trying to help take a stand against what Frollo is doing. In the book, what happened was Quasimodo did indeed save Esmeralda from being executed, get her into the cathedral, and she's safe for now. But word of Phoebus' supposed murder reaches the king, and the king gives special permission to go after Esmeralda to target her. The other Romani get word of this, and they try to get her out of there to safety in order to help her. Quasimodo misunderstands this, doesn't realize who they are, thinks they're trying to hurt Esmeralda. They think he's on Frollo's side, trying to keep her there to get executed. He thinks they're the ones who are going to hurt her. This does not end well. And in the confusion, Esmeralda is taken out of the cathedral and eventually ends up going to her execution. But like I said, thankfully here this goes better. Although there is a moment where Quasimodo does think that Esmeralda has succumbed to almost being burned alive.
Oh no.
Obviously, Disney isn't actually going to kill Esmeralda. She's just unconscious for the moment. But Frollo comes in, won't even listen to the Archdeacon anymore. I mean, this is a guy who's supposed to be ultra religious, and you can see here that has never really been the case. He's got a really warped version of what religion is, but when it comes down to it, he is not going to follow actual religion. Frollo goes and attempts to straight up stab Quasimodo, literally stab him in the back. Luckily, Quasimodo sees the shadow and is able to stop Frollo in time. And I love the way Quasimodo finally stands up to him.
Listen to me, Quasimodo.
No, you listen! All my life you have told me that the world is a dark, cruel place. But now I see that the only thing dark and cruel about it is people like you.
Quasimodo.
Esmeralda.
Quasimodo takes Esmeralda, tries to run with her, with Frollo naturally in pursuit. And I'm really glad that they included a moment where Quasimodo finally learns the truth about his mother. Because several times throughout the rest of the movie, Frollo kept saying, "Oh yeah, your mother was evil, think how your mother abandoned you, that's the way the world is, people are that cruel." Now Quasimodo finally learns that his mother did love him.
I should have known you'd risk your life to save that gypsy witch, just as your own mother died trying to save you. Now, I'm going to do what I should have done 20 years ago.
Now, in that scene, as Frollo is pursuing Quasimodo and Esmeralda, you notice he takes his sword and he slices into the gargoyles. This leads up to the most satisfying villain death ever in a Disney movie. It is, if I don't know if a thing can be called too perfect, but if it can, this is. Because Frollo gets exactly what he asks for. And like I said, it is perfect.
And he shall smite the wicked and plunge them into the fiery pit.
And Frollo's prayer was answered. The wicked were indeed plunged into the fiery pit. Hey Frollo, guess who the wicked are? Now, so many Disney villains die this way. You might have expected the Disney writers to have made it this way to go along with so many other villain deaths. You think of Gaston fell to his death. You think of in Tarzan, Clayton actually hung himself falling to his death. You think of the evil queen in Snow White, the very first Disney villain fell off a cliff to her death. Now, why do they do this? Because then the heroes didn't actually cause the death. The heroes remained pure and innocent. They didn't kill anybody. This is almost the way Frollo died in the book. He did indeed fall from Notre Dame, but Quasimodo helped him a little bit. Quasimodo actually, he saw Esmeralda hanging on the gallows. Frollo was there at the bell tower looking at the sight and laughing at the sight of it. Quasimodo snapped, picks Frollo up, and gives him a good toss. And Frollo didn't just fall straight down in the book. He hit a couple statues on the way. Now, it's heartbreaking for Quasimodo because he truly did love Frollo. He saw him as a father. And there's this just tear-jerking moment in the book. Quasimodo looks down at Frollo's crushed body. He looks at Esmeralda hanging there on the gallows and he cries out, "There's everything I've ever loved. Everything he's ever loved is gone." And in the book, tragically, Quasimodo goes to the gallows to retrieve Esmeralda's body, and years later, his body is found, his skeleton is found, curled up around Esmeralda's skeleton, which still has the noose on it. And when the workmen who found the bodies try to take his body away from hers, it crumbles into dust. Thankfully, Disney gives us a happier ending. Everybody's alive, and we see Quasimodo fully accept that Esmeralda is with Phoebus now, and always was. Now, that moment I think is one of the reasons actually why this movie doesn't get more love. Yeah, it's talked about as not really being your Disney type movie with its mature themes, with all its subtleties, with its darkness, but there are a lot of people who feel like I do and they praise it for those same reasons. A lot of criticism about this movie is about the fact that Quasimodo does not end up with Esmeralda. Esmeralda is with Phoebus at the end. Now, of course, we'd all love to see Quasimodo happy. And that was the reason the sequel to Disney actually made a sequel to this, although the sequel is terrible. It has none of the things that made this movie so special. The sequel was written purely to give Quasimodo a girlfriend of his own. Cool, give him a girlfriend, but make the story about it decent and do it well, please. But the fact is, I don't think, like so many do, that Esmeralda chose Phoebus for his looks. She didn't care about him being handsome at first. She thought he was working for Frollo. She wanted nothing to do with him. He was just another soldier. She wasn't entranced by his face. And she wasn't repelled from Quasimodo by his looks. I think it's simply a case of Esmeralda sees Quasimodo as a friend. And that happens where two people, you would think, that there could be romantic interest between them, but one or the other honestly sees the other one as just a friend. That happens. It doesn't mean that Esmeralda rejected him for his looks. It just means she doesn't see him in that way. And a lot of people have said, did Esmeralda even get that he was in love with her, that he wanted more than friendship? That's debatable, but an interesting thing to think about. So I don't blame Esmeralda for making the choice she did. I don't feel like she rejected Quasimodo or chose Phoebus based on looks. In this version, Phoebus is a hero. He saved the Miller's family. He showed Esmeralda who he is as a person, looks or not. Also, it makes sense from a character standpoint. Quasimodo is the opposite of Frollo. Frollo literally tried to burn Paris to the ground to get Esmeralda. He didn't care about her choice. Quasimodo cares enough about Esmeralda to say, "You'll be happy with Phoebus. I want you to be happy." He puts what Esmeralda wants first. That shows that he is, like I said, the opposite of Frollo. So from a character standpoint, yes, it makes sense. We all want to see Quasimodo happy, And he does find a different kind of happiness at the end. In this movie, he doesn't get to fall in he doesn't get romantic love, but he does get the love of the people of Paris. And there's this incredibly sweet moment with this little girl that everybody loves this moment. Quasimodo doesn't end up with Esmeralda, but he still finds the love of the community, the love of Paris. He's carried away in triumph by the crowd as Clopin restates the question he asked earlier in the movie. What makes a monster and what makes a man? Who is the monster and who is the man?
With a little guess if you can sing about Notre Dame. What makes a monster and what makes a man?
Of course, the obvious lesson, who is the monster, who is the man, is that no matter what he looks like, Quasimodo is a man, while Frollo is a twisted, evil monster. But it's what goes beyond the obvious that makes this movie so great. It's all those little subtleties I mentioned. And the fact that Frollo is very real, all too real. There are people like him in every era of history. In fact, I actually read one review that was written, I came across it online some time ago. I wasn't able to cite it for this. I don't know the source anymore, but I remember at one point reading that there were people like Frollo from, your you look at your Confederate South, you look at Nazi Germany, you look at today. There are people who will use religion as an excuse to hate. There are racists. There are people who will sexually assault, sexually abuse someone. And the fact that he's so real gives Frollo an extra layer of being frightening. And these lessons that stand against someone like that, are part of what make this a great story. Now, I can see it being too mature for a lot of people who just want a basic Disney movie, who want a good Disney movie. But to me, you add all those subtleties along with a fantastic voice cast, stunning animation, beautiful songs, unforgettable characters, and you've got a truly great movie that I wish more people appreciated. I don't blame people for their taste in movies. I don't blame them for their taste in any media. Everybody likes different things, but I think this is seriously an underrated classic. I will see you in my next review. Next time I'll be going back to talking about Once again for an episode. I'm still trying to break up talking about Once. We're talking about different Disney movies and talking about focusing specifically on different Disney songs. I will see you in my next video, and until then, remember the magic.